I will now pass it on to our next speaker, who is Jonah, who will talk about working with the Downtown Streets team.
My name is Jonah Ridgely. I'm a junior and I'm a history major. I did my service learning as part of my ethics of homelessness and housing class with Laura Stivers. So yeah, I'd like to start off with a quote that was from Peter King, which is someone who we read during class, who's talking about the universal right to housing. One can talk of a universal right to housing based on the need to fulfill an extensive list of human functional capabilities. So I wanted to start that off because I think it ties into everything that I'm about to say and everything that I learned while working with Downtown Streets Team. Downtown Streets Team is a program which helps unhoused and precariously housed individuals get out of survival mode and meet the basic necessities of life. They do this by compensating their work, cleaning up the streets with gift cards to grocery stores. So they're able to get food and just get by while they're on the street. So it was a really great experience for me. I cleaned up the streets every week or almost every week with unhoused and precariously housed individuals. Got to know them over time, somewhat slowly in some cases with people. Some people are more talkative than others, but it was really a great experience, and it shifted my perspective on homelessness as well as housing in our country, which I think sometimes they're talked as separate things, but they're very connected. So yeah, through my service learning, I basically came to realize that homelessness is not caused primarily by individual characteristics like drug addiction and mental illness. It's primarily caused by poverty and a lack of affordable housing. So these individual characteristics can increase the likeliness of homelessness for people, but they're not the underlying root cause. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't understand. There's a common narrative that people need to have a lack of work ethic, or they're homeless due to personal failures or setbacks or rather flaws. That's something that I realize is just really not true. Individual characteristics like mental illness and drug addiction are increased likeliness, like I said, but they're issues at all socioeconomic levels. And when you're born into a low income or born into poverty, it's much more difficult to overcome these issues, and you're more likely to end up unhoused. I got to know a lot of the people who I worked with. Specifically, I got to know Willie, team member Willie, he's a super funny guy, a great team leader and a hard worker. He told me that he's been working since he was 14 years old, but he's spent the last 20 years in transitional housing, living in a shelter. During that time, he had 2 surgeries. He's a super resilient person, great people person, like very easy to talk to. And it kind of goes against the narrative. Everybody I worked with had mentioned, having various jobs throughout their life, and we're all just very kind people. And, it really showed me that the narrative around homelessness is just very skewed. I think that if we can look at housing as a universal right in our country, that it would be a big step in the right direction to adopt that view. If, our government could kind of adopt that view, then we would be able to provide more low-income housing, which I think is the biggest solution to homelessness. I also realized that on a more real level, I understood that, systemic racism caused people of color to be more likely to become homeless. But one experience with my service learning made this stand out specifically to me. I was going to my shift one day, and one of our team members, Michael, he's a Black man, was being interrogated by the police, and they were questioning him about a crime that he didn't commit. This was at 8 a.m. in the morning as he was going to his shift. He had his downtown streets, and they let him go, and he was kind of expressing his frustration about the experience throughout the whole shift. And it just made me realize how difficult it is to be both unhoused and also a person of color. It's kind of a dual form of oppression. It's much more likely that once you're unhoused, that you're at a higher risk of being racially profiled and unjustly incarcerated. Once you're incarcerated, it's much more difficult to find a secure job and housing. And then you're just kind of caught in this cycle that is perpetuated by the systemic racism in our country. And this is stuff that I kind of knew in theory, but working with people on the streets really made this more real for me, and made me understand that it's not just something, as someone else said, it's not something that we just read about in books. It's a reality for a lot of people. yeah, I'm just really grateful that I got to work with Downtown Streets team. I am a history major, as I said. I'm hoping to go into education, hopefully at the high school or maybe later in life, the college level. And I think it's just super important to teach people about the history of segregationist housing policies like redlining and things like that, so that people have an understanding of the things that really cause homelessness and are able to maybe think more critically about solutions for this huge crisis that we have in our country. So thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all your shares.
Thank you so much for sharing all of those very powerful stories and reminding us about how important it is to shed light and change some of those narratives and that we hear often that are not true, and sharing those stories about the community that you worked with.